What's up, guys? That Really Gross Guy here. We are back to take a look at another ability swap video, and I'm pretty excited to get in and show this one off because not only do we have an interesting kind of kit, a couple builds to show you guys, but there is a very specific build which I really am proud of and really happy with, and that is a Nova that is capable of not only having a slow molecular prime, but also the Speedva molecular prime, where she can speed up enemies. And you guys are probably wondering how that is even possible. So stay tuned and you will see how to kit your Nova out to slow down enemies or speed up enemies, depending on how you see fit in the same mission. So before we get into the video, I do want to kind of point out that the Empower ability, which we're going to be putting a good emphasis on in this video, is a pretty generic ability. You're going to increase your power strength by 50% just by using this ability you can get from the helmet. I'm specifically doing a video tied to Nova because you can use it in her kit fairly uniquely. We also do have some other options in her builds, such as using Roar or using the Mark for Death ability. So yeah, I also would love to hear if you guys have any specific abilities for Nova in the ability swap, whole realm of possibility. What abilities you think would be really great or synergize well with Nova? I'd love to hear it. So I will be doing a designated video towards a lot of Warframes that will benefit from Empower in fairly simple ways, such as Oberon being able to, whether it's his ultimate or using his hallowed ground, significantly benefit from Empower. There's lots of Warframes that just having that extra 50% power strength is good. So I'm going to do a designated video towards Empower in the very near future. But without further ado, let's check out Nova. Alright guys, so here we are with our first build for Nova, utilizing the Empower ability to increase our power strength by 50%. Now, of course, a lot of people utilizing Nova for her Slowva, her molecular prime, being able to slow down targets is a very big deal. Utilizing this extra 50% power strength doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be getting enemies, completely stopped in their place, because, of course, Molecular Prime having the ability to slow down enemies, but we're not really taking advantage of the power strength for slowing enemies down. This build already has enough power strength to slow enemies down to a crawl, and that's not the point of the video. The idea is these enemies are now primed and are going to be taking significant amounts of damage. Using that Empower to increase power strength is going to get these enemies, taking mass amounts of damage for every kill. We just have to find those ones. There we go. Taking down guys, whether you're going to be utilizing your melee weapons, your secondaries, or like in this instance, I am using my Valkyr Wraith because its damage output can be pretty huge. So let's get in, let's prime a whole nother group of enemies, and here we go. Getting our molecular prime off, we now have plenty of enemies slathered in this molecular prime. Of course, the extra zoom in with that Valkyr Wraith is going to get you incredible damage numbers. So you can see here, placing shots over 50,000 on an enemy. Let's get in, let's see if we can get some more shots. That one didn't crit. Here we go. What was that? 60,000, 150,000, 19,000. Anyways, huge damage numbers. No matter which weapon you decide to use for your molecular prime is up to you, but the ability to, regularly use molecular prime, but if you want that extra boost, empower yourselves, gain that extra 50% damage output, then slather all your enemies in molecular prime is going to help you drastically in your damage output. Of course, enemies being able to explode is going to damage nearby enemies. The only thing that you've seen with this build is in order to keep my null stars on and keeping my armor reduction high, I have decreased my range, which means that the explosions are not that big. This build is focused specifically on single damage, single target damage output rather than, a giant AoE effect. But we can look into playing around with large area of effect, power strength with, empower, and maybe even marked for death for, explosions and, AoEs, like I said. All right, because our range is reduced so much by this build, the idea behind Empower works well with her second ability. Of course, because we increase that power strength, we increase that damage multiplier for her antimatter drop. Now, some people may prefer Wormhole over antimatter drop because they want that extra mobility. But this build specifically, I removed Wormhole so that I could keep my basically area of effect type damage, even though I reduced my range so much with, our build. So what I'm going to do is empower for that extra 50%. I am then going to use my antimatter drop and of course fill that antimatter drop with extra damage output. So now that multiplier on this antimatter drop is so high, it can then pretty much nuke everything in the room. That power strength is, like I said, going to increase the damage multiplier that the antimatter drop, dishes out. So, utilizing that again, empower, and say taking a weapon that deals much more damage output compared to our Axomades. If we take our Volcar Wraith, send out our antimatter drop, fill this thing full of absolutely serious damage, pin him to an enemy, we are then seeing hundreds of thousands of damage because not only are we filling that antimatter drop with, really high damage weapons, but we're also powering that thing up right from the get-go with the Empower ability we got from the helmet. All right, so we are in to take a look at Nova and her first build. Of course, keep in mind that I have not necessarily tried min-maxing this build. This is specifically to make Nova feel and play differently in her kit with the Empower ability. So let's jump in and see what I have set her up with. Whether you are an Energy Siphon, fan, or you want to swap out Energy Siphon for any other, or aura mod, that is up to you. There are plenty of auras that Nova could benefit from, so feel free to change that around. My Forma polarities are not necessarily exactly how I want them to either, so this build, of course, could grow and become more powerful. But my molecular fission is slotted in here because it doesn't damage my capacity that much for it to be in the slot. So molecular fission, the idea is to charge back those null stars whenever I have my molecular prime out and going, which is the point. My null sniper build, utilizing the Empower ability, gives me the ability to stay up high on energy reduction and at the same time be able to dish out good amounts of damage to targets that I have basically primed up. Of course, Umbral Intensify and Umbral Vitality. We have power or ability strength. We also have some health just to keep us alive and thriving for more endgame type content. Blind Rage, it does hurt our efficiency, which isn't all that bad. We have our ability strength, so that's great. We won't usually have to recast our one ability because it will be refreshed with our molecular prime. The big hindrance is obviously using molecular prime over and over and over again is going to be more expensive because we have pumped our ability strength this high. But 220%, whether you deem it necessary to be that high or not is up to you. So you could go with just intensify. You could maybe have a lower blind rage in order to keep your efficiency in a better spot, we'll say. But that is up to you. Maybe you have weapons that can really make up for the lack of ability strength. That's your choice. Narrow-minded is in there because we want to reduce our range so that our little orbs are not flying out all over the place, and we are losing out on net damage reduction. And of course, ability duration is going to help us significantly with our null stars, having additional null stars. The molecular prime is going to reach farther, which is going to be a big deal to slather as many enemies in prime. The prime ability, whatever, it's going to be out there. And then, of course, duration with prime continuity, once again, just buffing both our molecular prime and our first ability. So, yeah, and energy. We all need energy. The arcanes are not the most necessary things in the world. That we have extra damage or extra crit chance when we are damaged, which just helps with damage output. Arcane Victory, you could probably really rely on this in certain missions. Enemies, especially when they're slowed, easier to get headshots on, and having that 50% chance to get health restores could be pretty effective in higher level missions. So it's up to you. You could definitely swap your arcanes for something else, and they're not necessary for this build unless you want to push into higher level content. Alright guys, so now we are going to check out the build that probably most of you are here to see, and that is a Slowva as well as a Speedva build. So in the same exact build, we have the capability of slowing down enemies with our molecular prime or speeding up our enemies with molecular prime. In order to slow enemies, you need high power strength. In order to speed up enemies, you need low power strength. In order to achieve this, my build sets us up specifically with 40% power strength. Using the Helminth ability, the Empower ability, we are able to increase our power strength by 50%, which you can see here. We have 50% power strength increased, bringing us up to 90. And with the energy conversion mod we have, thanks to Cephalon Samaris, picking up any energy orb will grant us an additional 50% energy strength. That brings our total up to 140%, which now puts us back into Slowva territory. So you can see here, setting ourselves up, using Molecular Prime, manipulating enemies with that Molecular Prime. Enemies are slowed, which is absolutely fantastic. Now you can pick off your enemies, easy peasy. Slowva build, which can be useful in many scenarios where you want enemies to take a chill pill and not quite, overrun you so quick. Now let's say, for whatever reason, you really want to utilize speed. You think speed is the way to go. Maybe you're running a defense and you really want enemies to get to you much faster than their default state. What you want to do is avoid picking up energy orbs, and you're going to want to not use your Empower ability. So Empower is going to increase your power strength, very useful for a lot of different scenarios, but you don't want increased power strength at this point in time. So now, as you can see, low power strength, fast enemies, which is, like I said, beneficial in certain scenarios. You can see, let's take these guys out. The downside is low power strength also means that maybe your prime damage output that you're going to be doing with these weapons isn't going to be as high, but this is mostly utility based. You're using a Speedva for utility, probably to get through some grindy parts of the game, and then of course you can flip the tables, use your Empower ability, which can't be increased or decreased from 50%. It is a flat rate, which is not changeable, at least at this point in time. And then you're going to, oh, well, I goofed that. You're going to seek out an energy orb in order to increase that speed, or will decrease the speed of the enemies. So these guys, I believe, were already affected by Molecular Prime in some way, shape, or form. I believe I sped them up, just didn't end up killing them. So let's get ourselves Empower, which, like I said, not influenced by energy conversion because it is a flat rate of 50. After casting Empower, you're going to want to find that energy orb to bring you up another 50%. Hopefully, these guys will drop me an energy orb, and sure enough, they did. Now, utilizing this, a total of 140% power strength, enemies are now once again slowed. Pretty awesome. I don't know, the idea behind this video and putting on Empower onto Nova was to basically give her 2 builds in one, so that now you can mod your Nova to do 2 different highly sought after builds in one specific build. She is now, like I said, Speedva and Slowva, and she can do both. She can speed up enemies, slow down enemies, and it's interesting. I originally slipped Empower onto Nova because, number one, I haven't built a new Nova in a long time, and I forgot that her Null Star is affected by duration and not power strength when it comes to increasing her Null Stars. I was hoping to get a Nova that could slow down enemies and increase the damage you could do to them, and increase your damage reduction thanks to Null Star. But like I said, it requires what is it? Enemy. It requires duration, not power strength. So I'd like to maybe find a way to build a proper Slowva with a proper Null Star, like a high damage reduction Null Star. So maybe we can find a way to do so. Maybe with some other helmet abilities. Alright, so now we're going to dive into our Speedva and Slowva build. So jump into our Speed Toggle ability, or our slot, whatever. We have an aura, which you could pick and choose your aura if you want something different. This was literally to increase my damage sniper output so that I could take down enemies in the Molecular Prime much better, especially because our power strength is lower. We're going to kind of rely on that damage output from our sniper rifle, or my sniper rifle. Like I said, you could put pretty much anything in here that you feel like fits your build better. Molecular Fission, going to restore our Null Stars once again when we have enemies primed, because we're going to be priming a lot of enemies. We have our Energy Conversion, which is necessary for that 50% ability strength. When you pick up that energy orb, turns you into a Slowva instead of a Speedva. And Overextended, that is going to increase our range but decrease our power strength. Of course, decreasing our power strength is necessary for us to be a Speedva, but we want that range because that explosive energy that comes from our Molecular Prime is going to be larger. We're going to be able to damage more enemies across the map if we have larger range. We're going to also benefit from range with Augur Reach, but if you choose, maybe you don't want that much range and you're more looking to get your efficiency up or your duration up, you could maybe switch out your Augur Reach for, what's the other one? Constitution. You could get a little bit more duration on for this slot if you would like. but that is up to you. I chose range just so that I could damage more enemies and get lots and lots of more explosions. So narrow-minded is also in there. That ability duration is a big deal, and I did want to nerf the range to some degree so that all of our null stars are not shooting off all over the place. So hurting that a range does help me keep my damage reduction going, so I like that being on there. Prime flow is the smallest prime flow I could fit on this, but having lots of energy is pretty beneficial for Nova, especially since we are going to be using molecular prime a lot. And continuity, of course, that duration once again is going to be getting our more and more null stars and is going to help our molecular prime. All right, so we're getting in here, going to play around with this marked for death mechanic, and I of course want to explain the idea that this is a bit redundant because it is Nova. She already has the ability to prime and detonate enemies. So the idea behind having this on Nova was, of course, I've set this one up to be a bit more of a long-range Nova. Set this up so that I could null star and have some good energy or enemy damage reduction. And yeah, the idea was to maybe mark for death a specific enemy, get that extra damage output. Also, maybe add in molecular prime for additional damage output, and see what happens. But here we go, Arctic Eximus. Wow, you need to get out of here, Nully. You're just making this whole video that much more difficult. But we shoot him, take him out, and the combination of the mark for death and molecular prime do work fairly well. The only problem I have is the energy consumption this is going to take. So of course, utilizing it, we're spending about 50 energy. This changes depending on your efficiency on your builds. I have a little bit extra power strength and all that stuff, and my efficiency is not so great. But the idea is, let's get what other foreman's over here. Let's see, you're another foreman, but let's get another one of those going. Mark for death, take a shot. It's going to hurt nearby enemies, but how effective is that over molecular prime? It's not better. It's good in combination. That's about it. I can't see myself choosing March for Death on Nova as a long-term thing. There are plenty of other abilities that could, trump the Mark for Death ability. Increasing any sorts of damage output, such as Roar, could be a way to do it. Alright, because I just brought it up, I figure we might as well try out Roar on Nova. So I don't have raw damage numbers to kind of go through and explain how much huge damage, increases we are going to see on Nova, but I figured we would try it out. So for instance, I'm going to take a few shots at some of these premier enemies. You can see with a good weapon, I'm taking these guys out. I'm running a syndicate mission. Enemies are, level 25, 26, whatever. But you guys know your damage outputs in-game. You're pretty familiar with what type of content you can handle. Now, let's say you take those weapons, you slather them with molecular prime. That's going to be, great. You're going to get huge benefits from priming your enemies with that molecular prime. Now, maybe you just consider the idea that I want more damage output. I want to, utilize Roar, increase my damage output. Currently, the way I have my build set up, my Roar is giving me 66% extra damage output for over 50 seconds, I believe. So that is going to be, of course, very beneficial. Adding on, of course, the molecular prime, you're going to see, not only good damage output using your sniper rifles and all that stuff on molecular prime targets, but overall, across the board, your abilities, your primary, your secondary, everything is going to deal extra damage. It's not necessarily like we saw with Empower, It's not necessarily increasing your power strength. It's okay, Nora Knight, I get it. It's not about Lotus. You guys don't know how to shut up. But increasing your just overall damage output rather than your power strength is a decent way to go. All right, so here we go. We're going to jump in, take a look at our third setup. This is going to be the same build as if I was using Roar or if I was using the Marked for Death mechanic. Now, all of these are able, subject to change. If you guys would prefer something more than, say, Augur Reach, maybe you don't want that much ability range in there, you want some additional power strength or duration, you are welcome to swap something here or there. But there are a few essential mods in this this build. Of course, you're going to want the power strength to get as much damage output onto a target, so that damage output could then be, transferred over to nearby targets with the Marked for Death. Or if you just want Roar on your, ability, you're going to, of course, be doing more damage. That's the point of this. The Roar and the Marked for Death is extra damage. So having Blind Rage on there for extra strength, having Umbral Intensify on there for extra strength is going to be huge for this. The Molecular Fission, once again, is just going to continually restore all our Null Stars for our damage reduction, and that is, going to be influenced by our duration. Once again, you could do ability duration on with Augur Message, ability duration with Prime Continuity, and then if you want Augur Reach on here for range, you could do so. That is going to help your Roar if you are playing with allies. This is going to help your your antimatter drop, so you can get that extra explosiveness. The range will also help your Marked for Death explosive area and your Molecular Prime explosive area. So it's up to you. Prime Flow being on there just because this is going to be a bit energy intensive, especially because having Blind Rage this powerful is going to, require your energy pools to be drained quicker. So yeah, not much different about this build. It's basically just meant to make you more powerful so that your Roar and your Marked for Death is more powerful. Alright guys, so that is going to do it for this video. I really do hope you enjoyed the possibilities of Nova and her builds. And if you guys would like to, once again, let me know any type of cool abilities or synergies that would work well with Nova. I would love to hear them in the comments below. And we're going to be doing more ability swaps here in the near future. Stay tuned for that Empower video. I hope to get that one done next, but there's also, we'll see. If I play around with some other stuff, especially as I'm playing around with Empower, I might get inspired to try something else. But I hope you guys were inspired by this video, and I appreciate you guys stopping on by. I hope to see you guys again in the next video. Blah!